Welcome to Honest HR, the podcast for informed and aspiring HR professionals. I'm your host, Nicole Belyna. Today, we're exploring displaced talent and how HR professionals can guide them to new, more fulfilling paths. Joining us is John Morgan, President of Career Transition and Mobility and Leadership Development at LHH. Welcome to Honest HR, John.
Happy to be here, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So, to kick it off, for our audience, can you tell us a little bit about your background in career transition and mobility?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. It's been a great life's work. I've always, in my whole career, I've really enjoyed the blend of sort of business and psychology. And so back when I was out of graduate school in management consulting, we did a lot of work on helping companies design systems for employees. And then later on, when I joined Lee Hecht Harrison, now LHH, for the past 20 years, we've really just been focusing on how to really help employees go through a variety of different transitions. And so whether it's joining an organization, developing and growing in an organization, and then ultimately sometimes leaving an organization, it's those career moments that you really want to have people set up for success. So I've always had that element of my career, both before LHH and then during LHH. And it's been just a wonderful past 20 plus years of really helping people grow in their careers.
In this landscape of layoffs and uncertainties, employees feel overwhelmed. They can feel unsure of their next move. And this is also an opportune moment for HR professionals to step in and guide these employees through the tough transitions. Can you tell us about what strategies and tools have been proven most effective in identifying transferable skills in displaced employees, particularly as industries are evolving so rapidly?
Sure. I think that's the key. The industries are really evolving, and the sort of the workplace has really changed a lot in the past decade, and it's really rapidly advancing. So we have a lot of people moving around inside of organizations. We have people leaving organizations. HR is obviously at the front and center of that, and I think it requires all HR professionals to learn some new skills and also to learn how to deal with new emerging technologies. So on the skills side, I firmly believe that if you're in the HR profession, you have to be a coach. You have to have really good coaching and communication skills, and you have to really know when to deal with people with empathy. And so that becomes an important skill as you're helping somebody navigate any type of transition. But then the tools and best practices are really more on the tech side as well. So trying to figure out, what AI-based tools can help people identify those skill adjacencies. And that's, again, whether they're moving inside or outside of an organization, there's a lot of great AI-based tools that can help you figure out, okay, if I was doing this job and I had this set of skills, how transferable are those? Are there new adjacent skills that I can develop? And then what types of roles are emerging that I can get connected into? And so using the available technologies that are out there, whether it's bringing in a new technology or using HRIS systems that are in your company, HR professionals really need to understand how to use that, how to leverage it, but then also to take the data that the tool provides, and again, to engage in that really human emotive discussion to help somebody figure out what that next move is. So it's a real blend of good coaching skills for HR professionals, but also staying really abreast of the latest AI-based, skill-based technologies.
Yeah. And so really to set up employees for success, particularly through those transitions, HR professionals themselves have to be more agile and be aware of the latest technologies and continue to upskill themselves. Wouldn't you say?
For sure. Yeah. I think it's like anything, you have to practice what you preach, and you absolutely have to, if you're expecting other people in your organization to be lifelong learners and to acquire new skills, I think HR can be a great role model on how to do that as well. So again, when you're coaching somebody on these things, it's often helpful to relate it to what you've done as a professional as well. Tell your story, tell how you've adapted, tell what new skills you've learned to help you grow in your career. The job you were doing, a couple of years ago, is probably not the job that you're doing now in HR. So if you can use that story, I think, as a metaphor to help somebody figure out what their next move is, again, that's the power of a good coaching conversation.
How can HR professionals communicate with laid-off employees about their support options while remaining empathetic?
Obviously, it's a bit of an art. I think one, I think you can learn and develop empathy. So I think there's a little bit of skill building that every HR practitioner should work on: active listening skills and good communication skills. That's kind of simple. I think you have to start with just transparency always when you're communicating some sort of job displacement, whether it's performance based, whether it's job elimination, whether it's a restructuring, like whatever that context is. I think you have to give it to people straight, and they may not always appreciate that at the very beginning, but over time they will appreciate the transparency. So I think you always have to have that level of transparency and really trying to deal with facts and trying to help the person manage their emotions. There's that part of it for sure. Then I think you have to read the person in terms of meeting them where they're at always. But there's a lot of support options, hopefully, that the organization has put in place to help with people. So then you become an educator. You kind of shift from coach and counselor to educator, and you help the person really understand, well, we have, for example, maybe there's an internal redeployment program that we want to put you into so that you have, during your notice period, for example, a way to get into new types of roles or explore new types of roles. So maybe this actually isn't you leaving the organization. Maybe there's particular training programs that are available to the person that you want to point them to again. Are there assessment tools that you can help the person take advantage of so that they can understand a little bit more about what their strengths are, what their passions are, what their interests are, and then help them see what possibilities there could be. So I think you shift from kind of coach, counselor to educator, and then making sure that the person is really aware of whatever the benefit package is that the organization is providing. And so a lot of times, like we do a lot of restructuring consulting work, and we'll talk to somebody that's left the company, and they won't really know what the outplacement benefit is, for example. They just were never told about it, but they have it. And so then we become the educator, right? So I think the more you can do that while the person's still employed, the smoother that transition is going to be. And that's what everybody wants, right? Because you want to have people leave your organization with a good offboarding experience. So
yeah, people want to know what's next as best they possibly can. What role does HR data play in building a more inclusive and supportive approach to career transitions? So how can organizations use this data to ensure laid off employees and make sure they feel supported and they can retain trust through the most challenging times?
Yeah, the data is key, because I think the data and the technology stack that the HRIS has in the company, if you don't have that, you can't really help the person see what the possibilities are. So you really, data helps people identify what skills that they have that are adjacent and transferable. Data helps people understand, again, the suite of available roles that might be existing in other parts of the organization. If you don't have a good HRIS system, a lot of companies have marketplace systems where all of the internal jobs are posted and all of the skills are really clear. And so to be able to package that up using data in a way that the user can easily work with it, that's clear, because again, during that notice period, you can actually help somebody explore, and you can't do that if you don't have a good structured set of data. And that's the key. So many companies buy HRIS systems, whether it's Workday or SAP, et cetera, and they have poor adoption when it comes to actually figuring out what the skills are. Like, so they have people struggle to get their data into these HRIS systems. And so it actually starts really early on during someone's career, really make sure that people are using the HRIS, updating it with their skills, so that when something does happen and their role may not exist anymore, the system can do what it's supposed to do, which is to match them to other jobs that are open. And so I think that's the biggest way that companies can actually, leverage the big data to make a more meaningful experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're only as good as the data we put into it, right? How is AI transforming career transitions and mobility? Can you share some examples of how AI guides displaced workers towards career paths that align with both their skills and current market demands?
It's really, it's advancing the industry is probably the best way that I would say it. And I think there's some incremental things that it's helping on, and then there's some big ticket items. And so the small, sort of what I would call sort of, just sort of helping the experience go quicker is tools, right? So if someone's in transition, we have really great AI tools now to help them with their resume, to help them with their LinkedIn profile. I mean, these things make the experience just a little bit less stressful. A lot of I mean, it used to be in our industry that someone would leave a company and they hadn't done a resume in like 20 years. And that was like the hardest part. AI really helps make that pretty simple now, which is great, which is really great. It also frees up our coaches to do more higher value things versus helping them write a resume. There's also things like interview prep. It's really helped leapfrog and get people prepped to do interviews. I mean, people have always been anxious to do an interview, and then you added in a couple of years ago the onset of virtual interviews, and people really started to get freaked out. It's very, very stressful. Using AI-based tools now in the career transition process just helps you scenario, role play. I mean, you can really test and just, practice so easily using all of the AI tools that are out there. So I think that helps alleviate some of the stress that people are going through as well. But then the bigger gains I think AI is helping with are, again, back to this whole marketplace idea. Like, how can you really much easier match people's skills to open roles? Then you start getting really good job leads to the person, so they start to feel like they have an opportunity to move forward when they see job matches coming in. And so the algorithms and the machine learning really helps, with that experience quite a bit. But again, AI is great. This is a human, this is at the end of the day, such a human experience. And so we're always thinking about how do you augment that human experience with AI, but just at the end of the day, AI is not empathetic, right? So you need to make sure that you're balancing that and not forgetting that the coach and the counselor is still extremely important in helping that person move forward.
Workplace agility has become a major force in today's dynamic environment. What actionable steps can companies take to build long-term resilience while redeploying talent in suitable roles?
I think if you're thinking about like sustainable approaches, I think companies really need to shift to that skills-based approach. And what that means is really thinking about skills and not jobs, thinking about career journeys and not hierarchical roles. And I think that's where, again, you can help somebody figure out career paths inside of an organization if you're taking a skills-based approach. So helping a person really identify, again, skills that they have, skills that they could develop, and how that connects into jobs of the future, I think is really important. Also helping employees understand the long-term likelihood of some jobs being displaced by AI. I mean, there's pretty clear data out there that shows probabilities of if you're in an accounting role or if you're in a legal role or whatever role that you're in, there are elements that are more likely to be automated than not. And so if that's the case, what skills can you be developing? So I think that the sustainability piece, like the long-term piece that you're talking about, is really requiring companies to make that shift. Get away from jobs and roles, focus more on skills, whether you're hiring, developing, right? Like really focus on the skills that the company needs in the future.
And so it's really more of a proactive approach. It's not preparing an employee in the moment when they're going through that transition, but rather much earlier in their career to prepare them when or if that those transitions happen.
Yeah, and I think that's the sustainability piece, right? It's really being honest with the employee that these are the skills that we're going to need because of our business strategy in the next 10 years, right? And so opening that up and giving the people, like you say, proactive space to develop their careers, even if there's not a burning platform to make a job shift, that's going to help them when there is.
And so can you explain the concept of a skills-first framework and how it impacts decisions related to redeployment and career transitions for displaced talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we said, I think it's really focusing more on skills and competencies and less on jobs and roles. And so it's making it clearer to the employee what types of skills that they need to acquire to be future fit in this organization. Because when it comes to redeployment or career transition scenarios down the road, that's when the matching really can actually help, right? So, for example, and so many of our clients, they're tired of this model where you're letting people go and hiring people, It's incredibly disruptive, expensive, right? And nobody wants to do that. So the skills-based approach facilitates better redeployment outcomes. There's no doubt about it, because you can match people to jobs that you have to hire for. So that's a clear advantage. And then every organization does inevitably have to release people. That's just the reality. And so if you're focusing on a skills-based approach, when someone does have to leave, again, they're leaving with sort of a personalized roadmap of where they're going to go next already, because they understand a little bit more about, well, I know certain jobs are in demand. I know certain jobs are going away. So I've been working on some of these skills already. And now when I enter into career transition, I kind of know a little bit of the lay of the land, versus starting from ground zero and having to really take 3 to 6 months to even figure out what my job search objectives are.
Sure. Yeah. So even if you're transitioning an employee out of the organization, you're still, in many ways, setting them up for success with some marketable skills.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Amid talent shortages in key sectors, how can HR professionals balance immediate needs to fill critical roles with the responsibility of creating meaningful pathways for displaced employees?
Yeah, and it's balance for sure, right? It's balancing speed versus the right outcome is really key. I think it comes down to fit a lot. I think that's the thing that we've sort of used to talk a lot about in talent acquisition. And then I feel like, from a cultural fit perspective, I remember doing interviews in graduate school, trying to figure out cultural fit. And then that kind of went away for a while. And now I feel like it's back, and it's important. It's really important, because there's so many of our clients have the same person or teams that are involved in talent acquisition and career transition for that very reason, because they actually want to make the connections. So I think, look, you're always going to have some roles where the hiring manager might tell you, we actually need somebody from the outside because we want a different approach. And I think that's totally fine. But if that's, not the case, then I think, you should really think hard about, isn't it a better outcome to take an extra month to fill the role internally? Probably it is. It's definitely more cost effective. So I think you do need to have the balance. And I think you just need to take a look at what segments allow for you to do that, and which talent segments, clearly need an external hire because they need something totally different that the organization doesn't have today. But that's kind of has to start at the business strategy. Like, that should really be something that's figured out very early, right? It's not really something that should be left for the HR person to figure out. And then again, cultural fit is interesting, right? The data tells you, so onboarding people is hard. So many new hires, especially as you go higher in an organization, don't make it because of cultural fit. So again, that equation of, if you can just close the skill gaps on someone that you already know is a good cultural fit, you're going to get a better outcome.
I love what you just said, John, about balancing culture fit and finding the right skills, because it is a delicate balance for sure. And it does start before the HR professional, gets involved, ideally. And hopefully companies do take that time to invest and meet the skills gap, rather than go outside to look for a technical talent that might not be within the organization. And oftentimes companies do get very focused on finding this missing technical talent, right? And overlook, or they'll kind of, sweep under the rug, like, maybe the culture fit isn't quite as important. And then you've got a bad hire on your hands.
Yep.
Is there anything else you wanted to share about displaced talent that we haven't already discussed?
We've covered a lot. Great questions, by the way. I think probably the only thing I would say is that, we are moving away from what we used to call career transition. We're really talking about career transformation now when we do this work. So that's different than I think in the past. This whole idea of people have to reinvent themselves, whether it's inside a company or whether they're leaving a company. This idea that I just want to go do the same thing somewhere else doesn't really happen a lot anymore. So I think there's a lot of great tech out there that helps people build awareness. There's a lot of great AI tools that help people identify what their passions are, and also give them real-time data in terms of, well, what's the supply and demand of certain jobs. And so that's really cool, and that's great. And I said it earlier, that doesn't replace sort of in a transition inside or outside, that HR coaching sort of skill that can really help somebody make the leap. If you're sitting at your computer all day long, just looking at skills and jobs and all these things, you're going to struggle if you don't have somebody to talk to about it and actually role play with. And so I think that's where the guidance of an HR person really helps make those transitions. But again, I think the combination of AI tech and that human emotive support is really what's key in making a successful transition, whether you're talking about redeployment into a new role, onboarding, or ultimately leaving an organization.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great that you're talking about that balance. It's like they're complementary. AI and technology complement the coaching skills and capabilities of the HR professional during those career transitions.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Honest HR. A big thank you to John for sharing his deep insights with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Honest HR is part of SHRM's HR Daily flagship content series. You can head to shrm.org/HR Daily to learn more and sign up for our daily newsletter. You can also catch us on SHRM's social media. Be sure to like, comment, and be part of the conversation. Thanks for joining, and see you next time.
SHRM.
This podcast is approved for 0.5 professional development credits, aka PDCs, toward SHRM-CP and SHRM-SCP recertification. Enter the following PDC activity ID in your SHRM activity portal to log your credit: 26A7W4E. That's 26A7W4E. This ID expires on May 1st, 2026.